Hello, welcome to A Bold and Distant Future. This is Roy reporting about the International Workers' Day protests that happened this last weekend. The International Workers' Day in the United States of America grows out of a very interesting protest that happened in 1886, known as the Haymarket Affair, which is when workers were protesting for the 8-hour workday. And during that event in Chicago, Illinois, a bomb was thrown. People still don't know who threw the bomb, but it injured police officers. I think it killed 7 police officers, and then there was gunfire coming back, and 4 protesters were killed. And from then on, it became a May Day in the United States, became a traditional day to celebrate workers' rights. I know we have Labor Day as well, but this is another day that celebrates labor's rights. May Day. Hundreds of people got out onto the streets on May Day to protest Donald Trump and what he's doing to hurt the workers in our country. It's kind of interesting because many of the things that Donald Trump is doing are directly hurting the working class, obviously, taking away programs that support hardworking Americans. So there's a lot of sort of crossover between the anti-Trump movement and the workers' movement. Here's an article from the Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette, and the photograph they're showing is not an American protest. This is I think a French protest because it has their La CGT, which is I believe the French Workers' Party. Many countries have May Day is a national holiday. In the United States, it's normally not a national holiday, and it's normally on the 1st of May or the first Monday in May, to my understanding. Here's an interesting article coming out of The Guardian, I believe, and it says Saturday's Trump protests weren't perfect, but they brought a glimmer of hope. The hands-off event provided Americans with a slew of different priorities, and they can still form a broad left liberal coalition. It remains possible for Americans to form a popular front, an alliance of people whose politics would not normally put them in alliance. So this is good news that if all of these groups can coalesce together into one movement, we can bring more pressure against Donald Trump and the new fascist administration that is in our White House. As usual, I like to look at the reddest states in the United States of America, meaning the most Republican states, and look at the protests that happen in those states first, because I think it's very interesting to see if things are growing in those areas. And there were some good growth. In Tennessee, there were protesters on the state capitol. Not many. I don't think May Day is something that is normally celebrated in Tennessee, to my understanding, but people are out there protesting against Donald Trump's administration, and someone said, "We are fighting back." This is the beginning of something that's happening in our country. This is in Little Rock, Arkansas. There was a May Day protest on the steps of the Capitol. The May Day protests happen there. People are coming out to show their dissent and to peacefully protest. That's the other thing I wanted to say for sure, is that there was no violence of any kind, no destruction of property that I'm aware of during any of these May Day protests in the United States of America. People peacefully protesting. This is in Kentucky, I believe, and this is the protest that happened in Kentucky, wherein people, someone said, "We all need to be out there." Hundreds rally against Trump in Louisville May Day protests. Again, these are very red states, and so the numbers are small in these areas. But again, these are courageous people going out in a very red state, showing their dissent peacefully against the current administration. This is in Alabama in the Tuscaloosa News. They're still wondering what is 5051. If you listen to our channel, you know 5051 is the way to find out where your protests happen in your area. Just Google 5051 and you'll find that. But May Day protests happened in Alabama. I believe these protests were in Oklahoma, and I believe they're at the state capitol in Oklahoma. Again, you can see deport the oligarchs. It's not really a workers' protest so much as it is an anti-Trump protest. And that is some good news in a way, because it's gathering groups of people together to show their dissent from different groups, and it's coalescing into one kind of larger group. Informed people in Oklahoma, we salute you. In Idaho, there were protests again. Idaho had some big protests about a month ago, and here they are out on the streets again. Notice the distress flags, the American flag flying upside down, which is a symbol of distress. North Dakota. North Dakota had people out on the street. Looks like a rainy day out there. Again, this is a very red state. People braving the weather. West Virginia had some people out on the streets as well. May Day rally in Morgantown calls out federal cuts and honors West Virginia's labor legacy. Very nice. And then Wyoming. Hundreds of people in Wyoming joined the May Day protests. Again, you see the Pride flag, Pride American flag, and the Palestinian flag. And all of these kind of groups that you normally might not see protesting together, gathered together and under one umbrella of the May Day protests. Very interesting. It's interesting to note, too, that some of the recent deportees, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who's now in CCOT prison down in El Salvador, who was sent there without having committed any crime, no convictions, and no criminal charges. He is a member of a union. He is a first-year apprentice in the Smart Local 100, which is an international association of sheet metal, air, rail, and transportation workers. There's over 230,000 members of that union. And so that union is supporting him. Also, Rumeysa Öztürk, PhD student who was abducted off the streets for alleged support of Hamas without any evidence whatsoever. I mean, she co-wrote an article decrying against the Gaza war. She's a member of a union, the SEIU, Service Employees International Local 509, which has 2 million members in the United States. So both those two abductees are being supported by the unions. So it's interesting to see how these different causes are kind of coalescing together against Donald Trump and his fascist administration. I don't believe Mahmoud Khalil is a member of any union as far as I could find, but they are also supporting him as well. Here are some protests happening in other states. This is a protest up in Anchorage, Alaska on May Day, May 1st, 2025. Here's a protest happening in Austin, Texas, at the state capitol. So there were protests everywhere. Of course, the major cities had larger protests, but I've been focusing mainly on the smaller protests in these very red states where you don't normally hear about protests such as this. I think that's a good indicator that the pendulum is swinging against the Trump administration in many ways. Here's information with many websites that you can go and check out to get information about protests that are happening in your area. 5051 is the one I generally go to, but there are many others. Take a look at this slide and see if anything here appeals to you. Check them out. Get informed, stay active, get out to the next protest if you can. Bring a friend, bring a lot of friends, make a poster, let your voice be heard, and let's be peaceful. Let's give them no reason whatsoever to condemn our protest movement, because this is what we need to do in order to change the tide of what's going on. It's one tool in our toolbox against the fascist takeover in the United States of America. Hey, thank you everyone for listening. This is Roy signing out for Bold and Distant Future. We'll see you in a few days, and we'll be here talking again about the week's worth of news that's happening. Thanks everyone. Take care.